All right. Well, we're about 1 minute into our session time, so we'll go ahead and get started. I see more attendees joining us. They'll be welcome to jump in as soon as they're on. But thank you all so much for being here and for joining our Quizlet and conference. We're excited to be with you and to spend the next 30 to 45 minutes with you. And so to go ahead and kick us off, my name is Stephanie Soto and I manage our product operations team. And our product operations team here at Quizlet's core function is to ensure that we are creating pathways for user feedback and user sentiment that are coming in from users like yourself to share with our product and development teams as they're working on making our product better and better suited for the needs of users like yourselves. We also support when there's new products that are being launched. We work with the teams to make sure that users have what they need to use the product. And so we're a small and mighty team. I'll very quickly introduce each person, and at the start of their session, they'll introduce themselves. But again, I'm Stephanie Soto, and then you'll hear from later today, Jordan Service, as well as Bomi Kim Chang and Nick Johnson. We'll go ahead and move on. So today, we will be talking about leveraging Quizlet to help students gain confidence in their learning. So hopefully you're in the right spot. Welcome. We're looking forward to sharing a bit more about the Quizlet product with you and how you can leverage it with students in your classroom to build that confidence. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'm going to pass it. Oh, not quite yet. We'll run through the agenda. Apologies. So we'll first start off with Bomi. So Bomi is going to walk us through how we can leverage Quizlet to motivate and engage students in our classroom. Then we'll toss it back over to me. We'll look at how we can track mastery, leveraging Quizlet. Then we'll move over to Jordan. We'll look at unlocking capabilities with classes. And then we'll wrap up with Nick, who will talk a little bit more about the differences between Quizlet Plus and our free Quizlet product to help you inform decision-making on what you need for next school year. And then we'll have a short Q&A session as well. Okay, so getting started, I'm going to hand it over to Bomi.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Bomi, and I'm one of the product operations specialists here at Quizlet. Long before joining Quizlet, I actually used Quizlet as a student myself to study as one of my studying tools. And later, I also used Quizlet to help students learn as a tutor and then a speech language pathologist. I'm really excited to talk to you all today about how we can leverage Quizlet to motivate and engage students. Let's go to the next slide. So Quizlet offers several choices when it comes to engaging learning activities for students. If you want your students to engage with the content in your study set on their own, you can have them use one of the self-study activities like flashcards, match, learn, or test. We're introducing some changes to our learn and test study modes this year, but as long as you create a class and add your students and your study sets to the class you created, your students can access any of these features for free for an unlimited rounds. We'll talk more about the benefits of creating a class later in this session. Quizlet also has some fun and engaging in-class activities if you want your students to learn or review your study set as a group. We have two of these in-class activities. One is Classic Live, and the other is Checkpoint. They're both game-based activities that students can participate in using their own devices, and they have different settings and benefits that we'll go into in a little bit. The session that will immediately follow this session will dive deeper into the difference between Classic Live and Checkpoint and how these can benefit your classrooms more in depth. So I highly recommend checking out that session or the recording of it if you're interested in learning more about these after our session. Let's go to the next slide to talk about Quizlet Live. So Quizlet Live is a go-to activity for many of our teachers, and we love it when teachers share how they use it to help their students demonstrate their knowledge, all while having lots of fun together as a class. Here are some teachers who shared with us in the last few months that they used Quizlet Live to keep their students engaged throughout their class period and school year, and to quickly get a sense of where they needed to spend additional instructional minutes. At the end of each game, Quizlet Live lets you know the commonly missed questions, which can be a great way to understand where where students might be struggling, and that can inform your lessons. On the next slide, another great way to gauge how your students are doing is playing checkpoint. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. And checkpoint still may be new for a lot of our teachers. With Quizlet Live, your students are trying to get through all the questions as get correct questions, all correct answers on all the questions as quickly as possible. But with checkpoint, you can drive the pace of the game one question at a time on your screen. So you can handpick 6 to 12 questions to play a round of checkpoint with, and the entire class will move through each question together as you drive the game on your screen. After each question, you can review the correct answer and see how many students picked each of the answer choices, as you see on the screenshot. You can also throw in some written questions for extra challenge at the end of checkpoint so that you can play with multiple choice questions as well as some write-in answers. Both Quizlet Live and Checkpoint can help your students reinforce their learning and enjoy some friendly competition. Let's go to the next slide. It looks like in the session right now, we have, let's see how many participants. I've joined. We have over 300 instructional experts in this virtual room. And we would love to learn from you all how these games on Quizlet might be beneficial to your classes this year. Please go to the chat and share your ideas on how you might use Quizlet Live or Checkpoint with your students. After seeing some of these feedback from other teachers on social media and some of the screenshots you've seen, do you have any ideas for how you want to use Quizlet Live or Checkpoint for your class this year? If you have any ideas, drop those ideas in the chat and we would love to see. All right. I'm seeing some ideas for introducing new units on vocabulary, having students make their own and sharing their study sets. Some teachers are saying, well, we can use it to review concepts. And it could be a great way to synthesize what we've learned as a class. Lots of vocab and grammar related ideas. Those are great. And I see some comments saying we can use it before and after lessons to gauge how students have progressed. These are all really great ideas. Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing these ideas. And I really hope your students will have fun with these activities. And we hope to hear more stories on how Quizlet has motivated and engaged your students throughout the school year. And with that, I'll pass it over to Stephanie to talk about tracking mastery on Quizlet.
Thanks, Bomi. Hi again, everyone. And for those of you that just jumped on, my name is Stephanie Soto, and I manage our product operations team here at Quizlet. Prior to working at Quizlet and being in the ed tech industry, I also was a classroom teacher and school leader for 8 years in traditional public schools and charter schools. So I've been right there in the trenches with you all, and I know what the season can look like as you get a little bit of anxiety when you're going into Target and seeing the back to school section pop up. So thank you so much for being here. Your students are going to really value the learnings you're taking away as you prep for next school year. And so as we transition into tracking mastery, Building off of Bomi's section, we all know that when students are listening and they're engaged and they're paying attention, that's the first step towards building against meaningful learning. But really, what is most critical is tracking mastery, because mastery, I'm sorry about that. Tracking mastery is what's going to lead students to build confidence over time and be able to master and scaffold up their learning. It can impact a unit by unit learnings. It can also impact, school year by school year learnings over the course of one's education. You know this, though, this isn't you. So now let's look at how Quizlet can help support you in your quest to tracking mastery. So there's three main areas we want to look at today with how Quizlet can support you with tracking mastery. All of these Bomi has referenced as well in her section, so we'll build off of them. But the first one is Checkpoint. And like Bomi mentioned, Checkpoint is a really quick formative assessment that you can provide your students that can help you understand two really quick details. One is your class average, so how are your students performing as a whole, and can help you figure out what questions were answered correctly or incorrectly. Moving on to Quizlet Live. Quizlet Live, as Bomi mentioned, is a really engaging way to practice mastering content with your students. And the way that Quizlet Live does that is whenever students miss a question, it kicks them back to the beginning of the game, really encouraging the at-bats and the mastery with their practice. At the end of a Quizlet Live game, you're able to see what terms students needed to practice and therefore have not yet mastered, and what terms students already know. And then moving on to classes and sets. So when you create a class and you add sets to those classes and students to those classes, students can practice those sets in various study modes across Quizlet. And the results of those accumulated study modes will share details about the terms and definitions within those sets. So within those cumulative results, you'll be able to see what terms your students have often missed, sometimes missed, rarely missed, and never missed. And really, the short of this is Quizlet can help you understand what your students still need to practice. So I'll say that again. Quizlet can help you understand what your students still need to practice. So whichever avenue you pick, it gets you to the same place. And you might be thinking like, great, like now what? What do I do with this information? How can this help me? Well, what's helpful about what Quizlet provides is it helps you gain directional guidance on next steps that you can take in your lesson and future lesson plans. So it can happen immediately in the classroom in the moment of that activity within Quizlet, or future forward planning when you have time to think about your lesson plans at the end of a day with a cup of coffee. So how can it do this? As you all know, when students master content, that's great. If students are ready to scaffold it forward, you can move forward in your scope and sequence and your lesson plans. Meaningful learning can progress. If there's gaps, that's when it's time to kind of take a time out and pause and figure out what else you need to do to remediate and intervene to get closer to mastery. So now let's look at some examples of how that can happen. So we're going to go back to those earlier three areas or features of Quizlet that can help support this. We'll look at some example use cases from three different teachers that have leveraged these tools to support in their areas. So we'll look first at the far left, Checkpoint. So we have a teacher here named Ms. Gardner. And Ms. Gardner is teaching a new concept. She's teaching learned and inherited traits, and she decides to build in a round of Checkpoint after her direct teach portion of her lesson to assess how much students are getting it. After her first game of Checkpoint, Ms. Gardner finds that her class has a high average score. She feels satisfied in her intro lesson and makes a note to continue to reinforce the new terms throughout the week. So in this example, Ms. Gardner really wanted to gauge how well her students grasped this new concept, so she could make a decision in the moment if she needed to continue to teach learned and inherited traits or be able to move forward with the rest of her lesson. And based on this Checkpoint results, she was able to make that decision and move forward with her lesson. So moving on to Quizlet Live. With Quizlet Live, we have Mr. Mudd, and Mr. Mudd has planned for his students to practice new terms in his 8th grade government class using Quizlet Live. When the game is over, his results show his students are still learning the 3 branches of government: To help reinforce the learning, Mr. Mudd decides to use live again tomorrow, but with a new set that only focuses on the 3 branches of government. So in this example right here, Mr. Mudd has a broad range of terms from his 8th grade government class. He pulls out Quizlet Live and is able to see at the end results that his students are still really struggling with differentiating between the 3 branches of government. So he's able to make a quick, informed decision with what he needs to do the next day to further focus his learning and help students close that gap with those 3 branches of government. And in our last example, classes and sets, we have Ms. Ortega. So Ms. Ortega is working on next week's lesson plans. You can probably imagine her after a long day with some tea. Maybe she has some other grade level partners that are there with her. And she decides to pull up her class on Quizlet and review how her students performed during their independent practice on their 5th grade food chain set. She realizes students are often missing the terms carnivore and omnivore. They sound kind of the same, so pretty easy for an English language learner to mix up. So what she decides to do is build in a day to reteach those particular terms the next week, so that way students are reinforced with that learning. So you can see here another example of a teacher who's able to take learnings from Quizlet that Quizlet's able to provide, pause, and make meaningful improvements in the direction of their teaching going forward. So a few examples, and the examples are endless. I'm sure you all have tons of them with what you've actually done in your classroom to track mastery. And hopefully the starting point will help propel you and motivate you to, try this next year as you're preparing for your classes. And as we move forward, I'm going to hand it off to Jordan in just a second. Jordan's going to bring in how critical it is to leverage our classes to be able to unlock capabilities to help you move closer towards mastery with your students. So I'm going to hand it over to Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. And hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're calling in from. I'm Jordan. I've been a Quizleter for 3 years, and I'm a senior product operations specialist who works closely with the teams building our study tools. Having been a grad student myself for what seemed like my entire 20s, I love now being able to help students and hopefully help them, overcome and succeed with challenges that I face similarly. So getting right into things, we can move on to our next slide. And so a new change entering this school year is that Learn and Test Mode are now a part of Quizlet Plus. And so my goal over the next couple of minutes is to break things down so you can comfortably navigate this change and give your students access to studying without restrictions and to continue to be able to leverage our tools in and out of the classroom. With this update, students with a free account will receive 5 rounds of Learn and 1 free practice test per set. Next slide, please. So because of what I just outlined, really want to emphasize the importance of creating classes on Quizlet and how by doing so, your students can study without running into a paywall or being asked to upgrade. If you create classes on Quizlet and add sets to those classes, any student who's a member of that class doesn't have to worry about how many rounds they have left or whether or not they may be able to finish studying that day. And so while there are numerous benefits to creating classes, class progress and tracking mastery, as Stephanie mentioned, and don't forget about tomorrow's awesome session with a fellow educator that will dissect all things classes. I wanted to anchor these couple of minutes on the element of free learn and test for your students, because there are a few steps that teachers need to take in order to set things up successfully and have them in place for unrestricted studying. Next slide, please. And that is what we see listed here with these 3 steps. And so before I go any further, I just want to emphasize that this is for all teachers, free and Quizlet Plus alike. So you do not need a subscription in order to create a class and then give your students these abilities. And so as we look here with step 1, going in and creating a class, adding a set to that class, and then one of the most important parts of this process is making sure that your students are invited and that they join and become members of that class. By doing these 3 things, you'll then be able to have your students study without any of those restrictions mentioned. And I leave you with this last slide. It's just a final reminder that by creating classes on Quizlet, the screens we see such as these, your students won't have to encounter them. So again, just a reminder, we've got those steps to ensure are taken care of, and you'll be all set to study, or for your students to study without restrictions. And I'm going to pass it over to Nick to help round things out with Pre and Plus.
Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick, a product operations manager here at Quizlet. I'm a lifelong learner and studier and love helping our students and teachers get the most out of Quizlet. And today I have the pleasure of talking to you about using Quizlet as a teacher more and what features are available to our teachers to support you and your students in and out of the classroom. So jumping right in, Quizlet Teacher is a free version of Quizlet with a teacher designation that gives you additional options. As always on Quizlet, you have the ability to create custom study sets and search our vast library of publicly available material, which can be studied with multiple modes and games in the classroom. And as a teacher on Quizlet, you can also create and organize your own classes and add students to those classes to unlock unlimited learn and test rounds for them to support their time on Quizlet. Jump to the next slide. We also offer Quizlet Plus for teachers, which is a low-cost subscription, which can be a true game changer in the classroom with what we refer to as teacher superpowers. It includes our latest and greatest features like advanced set creation tools, class progress tracking, and many other benefits that I'll cover just on the next slide here. So talking through a few of those benefits, one of the best features of Quizlet Plus for Teacher is that it makes it easy for you to create multiple choice distractors and to take your sets to the next level with options spanning audio, images and photos and diagrams. So think of those situations where you need images of graphs or tables or pictures of a more complex problem that you may not want to type into Quizlet. That's where this becomes very valuable. You can imagine those long exponent problems you may be putting in if you're a math teacher, or if you're a history teacher, you're thinking about maps or perhaps diagrams for our science teachers in the audience. And once those sets are created and provided to students, another great feature is being able to track student progress in a detailed view. So if you were to create a set and send it to your students, you may want to see how those students are doing, of course. And with class progress, you can see who's attempted studying your set, with what modes, if they've completed a mode or if it remains incomplete. And with this detailed progress tracking, it really arms you with additional context and information to personalize instructions and also help decide where you should focus in on your time best. We'll go to the next slide. And then lastly, Plus for Teacher has many other benefits in addition to just those few mentioned on the last slide, such as an ad-free experience to remove distractions from your screen, the ability to swap sets in Quizlet Live or access our explanations content and more. And you can always learn more about those features on the Quizlet website to see how it might be able to support you in the classroom. And on the next slide as well, we also have a wonderful teacher's guide that's been prepared and is available for you. It has great information and touches on a lot of the points that we've discussed here today. So that is available for you if you need it. And with that, I will turn it back over to Stephanie and we will move into Q&A, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And he's absolutely right. I do see that we have some questions that are coming in our Q&A session. If you do have any for us, please feel free to drop them. We'll answer as many as we can right now. So I am going to kind of pick a few that seem to be like broader themes, and we'll toss them over to the appropriate product ops person to share out. And so let's have this one go to Jordan. Jordan, we have a lot of questions around Quizlet Plus and getting free rounds. So I'll read this one particular question that I think summarizes it nicely. It says, I have Quizlet Plus, so my students get free rounds and tests, or do they have to subscribe?
That is a great question. And so with test mode, if a student has a free account, as long as that set that they are studying is part of a class that you've created, they won't face any restrictions. However, if a free student just on their own finds a set and goes to study that set, they will only be able to take one free practice test. Now, if they were to study that same exact set, but it happened to be in the class that you or another teacher created, then that same student would be able to study unrestricted. I hope that clears it up.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm also seeing questions if there's any restrictions around classes being free for US or for other countries outside of the US and Canada. Jordan, we'll keep it on you.
Yeah, so classes are completely free. So teachers can create classes and yeah, not have to worry about needing a plus upgrade to do so. So yeah.
Awesome. And seeing some questions about write mode. Lots of teachers indicating write mode was like a really special tool. Jordan, why don't you, again, put you on the spot. Tell us a little bit more about the status of write mode, please.
Yeah, totally. So it's been a busy summer at Quizlet, and we've been, preparing for back to school. And in doing so, we've been experimenting a little bit and listening very closely to feedback. And so all of our team members, myself, Stephanie, Bomi, Nick, we've been synthesizing the signal we've been getting. And so we're actually, while write mode was taken off Quizlet, off the set page for a little bit this summer, coming in August, we are going to be reintroducing that. And similar to spell mode, some of you may have noticed that spell mode is within the options menu inside Learn. We will be giving write mode a similar treatment. So while write mode will not be on the set page as maybe you and your students have grown accustomed to, we are going to be introducing write mode again as a study mode sometime here in August, and that will be available inside the options menu in Learn. So thank you for the questions about write and for all of the feedback. Maybe someone on this call noticed that and shared, and we appreciate you reaching out with that feedback.
Awesome, thank you. And kind of related to classes, Nick, I'll toss this to you first, but maybe Jordan will align with your needs as well. Will students be able to see ads on the free version of Quizlet? How do ads work for students?
Yeah, it's a great question. Appreciate it. So students on our free version of Quizlet do see ads, as do our teachers. We work strategically to place those in the appropriate places where they're not distracting to learning or to set creation. But with our free accounts, they do have that on there. Student Plus, Teacher Plus do have an ad-free experience just to remove all distractions from the screen. So that is available to you as well. Jordan, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you've got it.
Perfect.
Awesome. And then I'm getting some questions about the cost of Quizlet Plus for teachers, or where folks can find information about the cost. Nick, can you take us there?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Quizlet Plus, you want to log into your Quizlet account. You should see information about Plus and pricing at the top bar of your screen. For our teachers, that should be $35.99, and you should be able to see it within your Quizlet account and dig into all the various benefits to see if it might fit you in your classroom.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next question, I'm seeing a few questions to want to better understand Checkpoint and the differences between, our solution for Checkpoint, perhaps other competitor solutions. Bomi, do you want to start us off there, and I can jump in as well?
Yeah, I will start off by pointing out some of the similarities between Checkpoint and something like Kahoot. It functions very similarly in that it lets you go through a set of questions and a teacher can drive the pace of the game one question at a time on their screen while students participate on their devices. The way you set up the the set to play checkpoint will be very different from the way you would set up a game on a different site. And so depending on your instructional needs, one might work better than the other. And then I'm trying to think back on the few times I've used other tools to think of differences. Stephanie, do you have anything to point out there?
So I've used both or like Kahoot as specifically as that. And something that I found really draining about Kahoot is you have to constantly create games. The benefit with using either Quizlet Live or Checkpoint is once you've created the set, you don't have to recreate anything to enable a game or a round of Checkpoint or a round of Quizlet Live. You've already done the work for you and you're essentially pressing a button or two to like get that ready for you. So there's not any advanced work that needs to happen. And I would also say another key difference is like the intentionality with the different tools. For example, with Checkpoint, it's a formative assessment tool. It's got some fun infused in it, but its main core focus is to provide insights into student learning. Whereas Quizlet Live, its main core function is to allow students to practice and master their content. And so when you pair those two together, you have a tool that really allows you to practice and master content with students, and then that kind of check for understanding, the CFU, with Checkpoint specifically. And again, super easy because once you have the set created in Quizlet, just a few buttons, and then you can have it ready for your students immediately. Yes, without recreating sets, absolutely. Our goal is to save you all time. Awesome. So looking at a few more questions, let's see, y'all are asking some good ones, and apologies if we're not able to get to everything. Is there Nick, this might be a good one for you. With Checkpoint, is there a way to change the settings so you don't make students right at the end? Actually, I think I can answer that one unless you, how about that? Awesome. Perfect. Yes, there is. There's a toggle in the settings menu where you can turn off the written questions round. It's definitely optional, so there's a way to turn it off. But while we're on that topic, Nick, I know that some of the Checkpoint and Live settings are a premium Quizlet Plus feature. Can you talk a little bit more about what's available there?
Well, sure. Of course, what we're referring to is in Quizlet Live is switching like a set in real time. So that's an option that's available within Live as well.
Awesome. And Jordan, this one might be a good one for you. We are getting some questions about spell mode. And so spell mode is still located within our learn mode, but Jordan, why don't you call out a bit more specifically, where is spell mode, what's happened to it and why? And then there's a follow-up question with how is spell different than write mode?
Got it. So yes, with part of these changes, spell mode is no longer featured on the set page. However, it's still available in the options menu inside of Learn. And so if you or your students enter into Learn mode and visit the options menu, you will see a link there that will direct you to spell mode itself. And that's where I was referring to earlier. Here in the near future, a similarly placed link will direct users to the standalone write mode as well. And so that's where today you can find spell mode and still leverage it as you have in the past. And I think one of the main aspects of spell mode is having that audio component. And so as we're thinking about, potentially language learning being a use case of why someone is going to spell mode, being able to, have to hear that term and then being able to then, to write it out, having that both aspects of that within the single mode and sort of the instant recall that's required there before moving on to the next term.
Awesome. And then a few additional questions. Let's see, and Jordan, I'm going to toss them to you. Can you choose more than 12 questions for checkpoint?
I believe 12 is the cap. And so as always, though, we welcome feedback. And so as you're getting back into the speed with your students this school year, if there are things like that come to mind, let us know and we'd be happy to share that with the team.
Awesome. And kind of to build off of that, there's a question around, will we be adding any additional games for students to allow teachers to have some, I guess, more variety in what they're using in the classroom? And right now, well, we don't. Like I said, our team, our whole mission is to represent what users need and what users are asking for and what they're saying. And so we welcome all feedback through all avenues, whether it's, with our help center and writing into us through that avenue, whether it's through social media. We are kind of scouring all of our pathways to understand what users are most benefiting for. So, or what users will most benefit from within our product. So definitely share that feedback with us if you're seeing that there's a need in your classroom. And then Nick, let's send this one for you. Is Quizlet Live available for a free account?
Absolutely. So you are welcome to use it with your free account there. No restriction on usage for that.
Awesome. And then Jordan, this one might be for you. For younger learners and English language learners, can photos be incorporated?
That is a great question. So there are there's no restrictions when a teacher is creating an account or creating a set with putting images that then students will see. Your younger students will not be able to add images to their own sets if they were to create them. However, as long as you, the teacher, is creating that and then sharing the sets with the students, images are totally fine.
Awesome. And we probably have time for maybe another 3 questions, 2 or 3 questions. If you have any others, please feel free to get them in. There is one question, Jordan, I think you might be able to answer. Is the content or class created by a Quizlet teacher permanent? Can it be removed after a period of time?
Yes, great question. It can be removed. So that teacher will be able to delete that course. Maybe they want to tidy things up and reposition it for a class that's coming up in the spring semester, et cetera. But as the creator and owner of that class, you'll be able to update it and delete it if needed.
Awesome. And Nick, this one is for you. Are there teacher group discounts available?
It's a very good question. We do offer teacher group discounts. So if you have a group of teachers at your school that would like to purchase together, or if the school would like to sponsor that, absolutely, by all means, they do vary. So the higher the subscriptions purchase for that, the larger the discount. So definitely encourage teachers out there who may be thinking about it. If you know another teacher who wants to purchase it as a group, by all means, and we do have information about those available on our website.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And Jordan, another one for you. If a teacher were not able to create a class in Quizlet, is there another way for their student to be able to access that study set?
Yes. So your students, whether they're free or have a Plus subscription, would still be able to access a set, whether the teachers created it or not. However, they won't have the unrestricted studying that we outlined before. So yeah, if a free student encounters a set, they'll hit that paywall. However, that same set in a class created by a teacher would give that student unlimited studying, if that answers it.
And I think a follow-up to that, Jordan, so if students are not in a class, what can they access for free?
Yeah, so if a student is not in a class, this is where they'll be able to use flashcards and match mode for free, spell and write. However, once they get into learn and test, that's where their free account will have some restrictions with the amount they're able to study. And that's where the per set basis comes into play. And so if I'm a free student, I hit that paywall with a set in my chemistry class, I can still use learn and test for my geography course until I reach the paywall for that particular set, and vice versa.
Awesome. Thank you. And just one last question. If I upgrade to Plus as a teacher, will my students be able to view content in my class ad-free? So yes, if you are leveraging classes, those 3 steps that Jordan outlined are true to unlock unlimited rounds of test and learn, and it's also true to unlock an ad-free experience for your students. If you create a class, you add sets to that class, and you invite students to that class, though when students interact with those particular sets, they will be able to see an ad-free experience, and they will also be able to use learn and test round unlimited. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for the great questions. We appreciate your time and joining us. We've really enjoyed the time with you. We hope you have a great rest of your conference session, and please feel free to write in and continue to share feedback. We'll chat with you all soon.